Well, remember in the previous class, we had discussed about the three levels of worship. If you remember, it was the first level, the outer level, is the practical worship of the divine in the act. Next is a symbol of worship in the form of the act expressing some vision and seeking or some relation with the divine. And lastly, an inner adoration and longing for oneness. And I read out to you something from the mother, and she makes it very clear that the first one is the outer worship, is purely the physical form. And I think we all know what it means, what all that we do in the temples and here and there. The outer gesture, and I explained that even when you build a temple or a church or a gurdwara, that's the outer form of this physical worship. And whole of humanity has been engaged for the past several centuries in building up this outer form. Then there is a second level, which Mother calls it as the mental consecration, which makes the act that is performed a symbol. Second level is the mental construction or the mental consecration. You see, when we offer, as she has herself explained, for example, of the aspiration burning in the body or self-giving in a dissolution. When we give an agarbatti, when you offer a batti, which I had explained earlier, so she says it's a symbol, but it's a symbol that has been given by the mind. We read a symbol into that. And what is the symbol we read into the agarbatti, into the incense? The aspiration burning in the body or self-giving in a dissolution in the purification of the fire. That means you are aspiring that just as the incense is burning itself in devotion to the Lord, so too you may burn your life through your actions, through your emotions, through your thoughts. But constantly it is for the Lord. So it is your own consecration for the divine. So that's the mental consecration. Third level, what Sri Aurobindo calls as the adoration and longing for oneness. This is the aspiration for union. And that all these acts and the symbol you make of them may be only a means of drawing closer and closer to the divine and making yourself fit to unite with Him. So first is the purely material, something mental and something psychic. So these are the three levels that come in every worship, that ought to come. But unfortunately, I don't know if you really go to the other two levels, mental consecration and the psychic consecration. Because as we said, we are all majorly stuck in the outer. Every religion, every temple, every tradition has different forms. So this is something that is quite inevitable. I mean, the very moment you admire, you adore. You see, again we have said this word. First, you must admire the divine, which is more or less mental. Then you reach the level of adoration, which is deeper. And then you reach the level of loving the divine, love for the divine. So it's essential to have the admiration first. And for admiration, how will you have an admiration of a person unless you come to know about him or her? So what is God? Who is God? Who is Durga? Who is Kali? Who is Mother? Who is Krishna? Who is Christ? We ought to know that. Now, how do we come to know? By reading about them, by listening about them, by people telling you. It may be stories, it doesn't matter. But you see, from our childhood I have been listening about Sri Krishna. Or from my youth, when I was in ashram, I was still listening about the mother. So slowly there is a mental awakening that comes in. Then you know, oh my God, this is the mother. That's why we read the lives of Sri Aurobindo, the mother, about Christ and Krishna. Krishna, there are thousands of stories. But if we tell these to the children, you may think it is just a knowledge or a story. But that is how we are passing on this first step of knowing, admiring, as we say. And then you see, even when we were children, we did not have adoration to the mother. It was admiration. Because we are too small to know who she is. But we heard about her, we came to know, we saw her gestures. But slowly as we grew up, that becomes adoration. So it is a stage in one's growth. You cannot have adoration on day one. When we say love the mother, love the divine, love God, you cannot reach that love in one day. It's a process. So that's why I was telling you the other day, let's not claim that we really love the mother. Because it's easy to say I love the mother. But before you reach that level of loving the divine, first stage below that there's adoration. Do you adore her? Do you adore Krishna? Do you adore Christ? And then before that, do you know about anything? About them in any way? So it's a very glib thing to say I love the divine, whoever the divine may be. Because love is almost the last stage, because love comes only from the psychic level, from the soul level. Adoration comes from the heart, admiration from the mind. So unless you pass these levels of the mind and the heart, you cannot reach the level of the psychic. It's only there that we can say that love of the divine, for the divine comes into you. Well, that is, the mother explains there and then at the same time, if you remember, she continues to say, Sri Aurobindo has given a sentence which I was explaining. For if without a spiritual aspiration worship is meaningless and vain, yet the aspiration also without the act and the form is disembodied, and for life an incompletely effective power. I am just explaining this because I want to go further with what the mother has explained, and just is a kind of a revision for you. You see, any worship must have all the three. I am using the word must, Sri Aurobindo also would say it must. So let us not really look down upon the outer worship, the physical worship, saying that all this is religious and spirituality has nothing to do, because that's quite a common notion amongst us. Why do we do all these pujas and ceremonies and this and that? And we are kind of, given the impression that we should look down upon these people who do this external worship. But on the contrary, Sri Aurobindo would say, without a spiritual aspiration, worship is meaningless and vain. So without the third level, what Mother calls as the psychic consecration, the aspiration for union, all worship is useless. Because just doing a puja has no meaning unless you have that fervor, that adoration, that admiration. Just the external gesture has no meaning. So it says, what is important is the inner feeling, but what is beautiful is the second part. And although form and and yet the aspiration also without the act and the form is disembodied, and for life an incompletely effective power. So you may have just the aspiration, you may have even adoration, you may have so-called, if you have reached the love of the mother, but it must be embodied, it must have the outer form. As he puts it here, form is a disembodied and for life an incompletely effective power. As I explained in the other days, if you remember, just as a soul takes up a form. Why does a soul take up a form? Because this body, this form, is a manifestation of the divine, and at the same time, without the body, the soul cannot fulfill the work, the mission, the aim that has come upon earth. The soul is there in their own world, in its own world. But without taking up a body, it cannot do the work for which it is born as a soul. So we see the importance of the form as well as the adoration, the admiration, the love. So both have to be combined. So one is incomplete without the other. So let us never have this attitude that this outer worship is not right. It is not right only when there is a disjoint, disconnection, when there is no bridging. If you are doing that as I think Aurobindo would as a mechanical rite, as a ceremony, then it is useless. If you are doing any ceremony, any puja, just as a mechanical rite, as the mother would explain later, if you just go and do the prayers in the temple, prayers in the church, these are all words that you have been taught and which you repeat, saying the same words. So if there is no elan, if there's no that leap of adoration, then all the gestures become meaningless. So what we understand here is that all the three are important: the physical, the mental, the psychic. Only when there are three together that the outer gets an importance and the inner aspiration gets a chance to manifest itself. So that's one thing that I had explained, that we have read before. But today I would like to take you to something even beyond that. I discovered that in the morning when I was reading the Mother. So I thought I should share with you. And it's very relevant now. We have got, tomorrow Masimagam here, as I told you. Hundreds of Godheads are descending here. Yeah, a huge function. Well, of course, the question is, Sweet Mother, does the worship offered to the goddess Durga and Kali have any spiritual value? That's a very important question. And now we understand, not only to Durga and Kali, it could be Ganesh or Krishna or this god or Sanganiyama, whatever. But basically, the question is, does it have any spiritual value? That depends on who offers the worship. It is not that which is of importance for the spiritual value. For the integrality and the complete truth of the yoga, it is important not to limit one's aspiration to one form or another. That's lovely. You see, this explanation that I'm going to read out is really quite, it blasts a lot of our usual ideas. First of all, one God, one form. So he says, an integrality and complete, for the integrality and the complete truth of yoga, it is important not to limit one's aspiration to one form or another. So there is no question of worshipping one God or one form or one avatar or one murti. You see, this is again, what happens if you worship one God or one form or one person or one guru? Immediately there is a stamp of religion. You become narrowed, you become fundamentalist. So you are not being spiritual in that. So obviously she is saying to really not to limit one's aspiration to one form. That means you can really bring in so many other forms. That means there is a Catholicity in the mind. There is no fundamentalism. There is no narrowness. Number one. Next, but from the spiritual point of view, whatever the object of worship, if the movement is perfectly sincere, if the self-giving is integral and absolute, the spiritual result can be the same. For whatever object you take, through it, sometimes in spite of it, despite it, you always reach the supreme reality in the measure and proportion of the sincerity of your consecration. Now we are coming to the second level. First she said, break down this limitation of one God, one form, one deity. Next, this is what Gita would tell us again, that whatever object you take, through it you always reach the supreme reality. So now that's again something great. That ultimately it seems nothing external matters. Whom you worship, it doesn't matter. What form you worship, it doesn't matter. You may be worshipping 10 different gods or 10 different gurus or one guru or none. Because as Lord Krishna told us, it could be a leaf, a cup of water, it's a flower. He says, if you give that to me, if you give that to a God, it ultimately comes to me, he says. So there is this beauty, what the mother is also explaining. You always reach the supreme reality in the measure and proportion of the sincerity of your consecration. So ultimately behind all these forms, all these gurus, all these religions, there is only one supreme reality. These are all means for our entry, or what we say, I would say, for our introduction. I am introduced to Lord Krishna because I happen to have been born in a Hindu family. That's just a happen to. There's nothing great about it. A Christian born in a Christian family, he gets the gateway to God through Christ. So what's wrong? I mean, why should we limit ourselves saying, oh, my God is greater, my God is better, my ism is better? These are all opportunities, occasions given to us because we have been born in a particular culture. But we need to move towards the Supreme. That is why it is always said that no matter what aspect of the divine you adore or even what guide you choose, if you are perfect in your self-giving and absolutely sincere, you are sure to attain the spiritual goal. Well, that's the last shot. That's truly spiritual. So it is no matter what aspect of the divine you choose. You choose Nirguna Brahman, Saguna Brahman, you choose Krishna or Kali or what they ask, Durga or Kali, is absolutely immaterial. Why? Because as we have seen, if you are taking only help of the outer, the physical consecration, and if you get stuck there, it may be Kali or Durga or Krishna or Christ. We are stuck on the outer level, which is actually the place of religion. So in these three levels, what we saw, the physical consecration, the mental consecration and the psychic consecration, the physical belongs to religion. So religion is always and always attached only to the outer. Well, sometimes when it is combined with occultism, religion and occultism, it comes to this level of the mental consecration, the second level. But very rarely you come to the third, the psychic. So I would put it this way, the physical consecration is religion, the mental consecration is psychology or occultism, the psychic consecration is pure spirituality. So what the Mother and SOY Aurobindo are telling us again and again, when they say go beyond religion, it is not to throw away religion, it is not to reject religion, it is to get into the third level, the psychic consecration. You see, religions, as he puts it somewhere, I think I was reading in another chapter, he says, you see, in human evolution, at one point of evolutionary time, some things are great. Your culture, your dances, your music, whatever your forms. But after a century, you say, oh, those are old forms. And you move on to new forms, especially you see art. You see, there's a tremendous evolution of art. You see the museums in the West, the Renaissance period museum, and brilliant art. But present modern generation has gone completely beyond the Renaissance painting, which were so beautiful, and yet times change, forms change. And then we say that Renaissance painting, which we have this Impressionism, for example, after the Renaissance came the Impressionism, which is again a brilliant attempt at art, and yet Impressionism also gone. So what we see is that which was beautiful and good at a point of time becomes old and rejected when the new form comes. So similarly, he says, religion also has done its great work. But now the time has gone where we are now emphasizing on spirituality. Spirituality which doesn't reject form, which doesn't reject religion, but giving the religious outer form and the psychological form the true meaning. What we missed all these days was the psychic consecration. So Mother and Sri Aurobindo are emphasizing on bringing back the psychic consecration. So they will not outright say reject all the form of worship, because one thing is there, as long, this is again from the Mother from somewhere, as long as human beings are on the physical consciousness, on the level of physical consciousness, religion is a necessity. And you see, always in evolution there is a pyramidal style of evolution. All this pyramidal style, pyramidal form. The lowest level, the rung of people, they are on the physical level. So they must have something to hold on to. And the best thing is religion. So let's not advise saying, oh, religion is the thing of the past, let's quit it, let's reject it. No. Humanity needs it. Always there is a process of evolution. Everyone is not a spiritual person. But from the religious to the psychological to the spiritual, we move, we grow. And that's why we should never sort of say that's bad or this bad, religion is wrong or religion is right. Everything will coexist in this world, except things will move going up the ladder. There will be a few who will come up. So now this is what the Mother is telling us. So she says, no matter what aspect of the divine you adore or even what guide you choose, if you are perfect in your self-giving and absolutely sincere. So this is what I admire here, where she says, if you are perfect in your surrender and offering, that's what the chapter that we are reading is about, surrender and offer and sacrifice. So what is important is this question of self-giving and being absolutely sincere. And in another context she says, if one is really sincere, they will become spiritual in spite of all the drawbacks of religion, in spite of all the influences. It matters not you are a Hindu or a Christian or a Muslim or Zoroastrian. What matters is your sincerity and your self-giving or consecration or surrender or self-offering. So what we see in Sri Aurobindo and the Mother's yoga is that not giving you any deity worship, any form of any Godhead. Says what is important is your own act of giving to the Lord. And you can give it to Senganyama right on my street here, Vaniya street, there is a beautiful temple. Or you may go to a Krishna temple, or you may go to a Christ church, you may go to Gurdwara. These are all external forms. But you can go there, and if you are not sincere, it has no value. If you can go to Christ or Krishna great temples, and if you are not sincere and if you do not give yourself, it is of no value. So what is of value is that sincerity and self-offering. But the result you are sure to attain the spiritual goal. Now, but the result is no longer the same when you want to realize the integral yoga. Then you must not limit yourself in any way, even in the path of your consecration. Only these are two very different things. Now, this is where she is bringing the difference between integral yoga and the older yoga. And she gives an explanation here. Spiritual realization, as it was formerly understood, as it is still commonly understood, is union with the Supreme in some way or order, either within you or through some form or other. It is a fusion of your being with the Supreme, with the Absolute, almost the disappearance of your individuality in this fusion. So what is the difference between the old and integral yoga? The old yogas emphasized on spiritual union with God. Sometimes they said, I want to have the realization of the Atman. Sometimes they would say, I want to have the realization of the universal Godhead. I want to realize the God in the temple. I want to realize the... But all the time and every time it is union with one level of Godhead. Individual level, the universal level, the transcendent. That is the old yogas. Right from Vedas up until now, All the forms of yogas and religions have emphasized on union with the divine. And that depends absolutely on the sincerity and the integrality of your self-giving, rather than on the choice you make of that to which you want to give yourself. For the very sincerity of your aspiration will make you cross all limitations and find the Supreme, for you carry Him within yourself. Mother is a great psychologist. You see, she doesn't bring in philosophy just for the sake of it. It's a pure psychological analysis. This, what happens? You see, how is it that this external religious form of God has no weightage, if I can say, use the word, if you want to be spiritual? Why? Because if you are sincere, in fact, I mean, just read that first now. You may pierce a hole you can, you see, with your aspiration and make a movement in depth through anything at all. You see, sincerity, offering, surrender, sacrifice, or she says, like making a hole within your being. You know, when we have a magnifying glass, when we want to burn that in our classes, what did we learn? We bring the magnifying glass, we focus all that sunlight, putting it to a point, and then you can burn a thing. So sincerity and offering is surrendering is exactly like that magnifying glass, where all the divine power you're putting it together and then putting a hole into your own being from where you can reach the divine. So Atma realization is constant consecration and absolute sincerity. You can realize any form of God because ultimately, basically, you carry Him within yourself. You see, you're not doing something that's beyond, you're not doing something beyond your reach. That divine is here within. So you are able to realize the divine outside or in the temple or in the universe, because that divine is nothing but a reflection of the divine within you. Whether you seek Him outside, whether you seek Him within, whether you seek Him in a form or without form, if your aspiration is sincere enough and your resolution sincere enough, you are sure to reach the goal. So that's again, you see, every time she is emphasizing only on the word sincerity and self-consecration. It does not. Now, what do we conclude? That any form of religion, any form of God is immaterial if you want to realize the divine within. All the outer forms, all the isms, all the shastras, all your scriptures, they are only a help. That's why when Aurobindo is describing about the 4 aids in yoga, he says the real Guru is within you. And he says the Veda is not the Vedas that we have seen outside, the Vedas is within you, the scripture is within. The eternal scripture is within the human being, the soul. So we have knowledge within, the Guru is within, and therefore he would say, if you are sincere, you will realize. But if you want to make the complementary movement which Aurobindo speaks, that is to say, to return to the outer consciousness and world after having realized this union in yourself and transform this outer consciousness and world, then in this case you cannot limit yourself in any way, for otherwise you will not be able to accomplish your work. Now this is what is important for us. You see, for the old yogas, be sincere, be consecrated, and you realize the divine to the extent that you put in your efforts. But for Aurobindo's yoga, there is a second movement. It's not just realization of God that we want. We said we want the manifestation of the divine in the outer world, the change and the transformation of the outer nature. So here the work becomes much more. We are not concentrating only upon ourselves, we are concentrating on manifesting something. So all of us, as she would explain in another context, I'll read out. You see, why is it that every one of us wants to do something? give a form to my ideals, give a form to my aspirations, give a form to my ambitions. Because this is innate. Just as the divine wants to manifest what is potential within him, so to man, it is his innate nature to manifest something, some form or the other. Because he will never remain quiet just meditating in his room or realizing God. So he says, for sure Aurobindo's yoga, it becomes different because we want to have a transformation of the outer consciousness and world. Essentially, you must be able to find this oneness with the divine in all forms, all aspects, in every way that has been used to reach him. And you must go beyond that and find a new way. So the first point to clear up in your thought, and it is a point of capital importance, you must not confuse the integral yoga with the other spiritual realizations, which may be very high, but cover a very limited field, for theirs is a movement only in depth. So this simple letter, or explanation, not a letter, gives you in gist, without taking away the importance of the old yogas, that there you realize the divine, here in Aurobindo you manifest the divine. How do you manifest the divine? That is called the integral yoga. But essentially, if you are asked the question, what's the difference? This is it. But if you want to transform your nature and your being, and if you want to participate in the creation of a new world, then this aspiration, this sharp and linear point is no longer enough. One must include everything and contain everything in one's consciousness. And that is why it becomes difficult. So, the demand of an integral yoga or integral yogi is very vast. It doesn't confine itself saying, I will have my realization, my liberation, my moksha. It's all the time, not only is it trying to change this outer nature, but manifest something in the outer world. So, the effort of the integral yogi is manifold. And there's another question which I thought I would share with you before I take up the text. This is the one I wanted to read. Somebody asked the question, Mother, what is this divine element in human nature which always demands symbols for the completeness of its spiritual satisfaction? What? Which demands a form, an expression in form? Oh, what I have just read to you today. It is precisely that part of the being which is not satisfied with abstractions and with escaping from life and evading it and leaving it as it is. It is that part of the being which wants to be integral, wants to be integrally transformed, or at any rate to participate integrally in the inner adoration. Now, this is what I want to tell you. In every normal human being, there is the necessity, the need, an absolute need to translate into a physical form what he feels and wants internally. I consider those who always want to evade life in order to have self-realization as abnormal and incomplete. You see, this is the view that all that asceticism, that was good in the past, there are no quarrels. But now she says, this is not the time to be ascetic. Because she says that is a kind of an abnormal character, personality, and even she would say it's a weak personality. And in fact, these are usually weak natures. But those who have strength, force, and a kind of healthy equilibrium in themselves feel an absolute need to realize materially their spiritual realization. They are not satisfied with going away into the clouds or into worlds where forms no longer exist. They must have their physical consciousness and even their body participate in their inner experience. You see, this we see happen in the case of Mother and Aurobindo themselves. You see, they could have had their supramental realization and be sitting quietly in a cave or a little corner in their world, be it in Paris or in Pondicherry. But that is not supposed to be, because whatever their realization has to be shared with mankind. To the moment when you say shared, there's got to be a nodus, a point where that new consciousness can come down. And there it says, there must be a formation in the outer being, in the outer world. So that was the raison d'etre of the ashram. When and why it was started, it was a necessary thing for the consciousness of Mother Aurobindo, what they were achieving. It must be given a body, an outer body. Otherwise, just an inner realization was insufficient. It is incomplete, not insufficient. It is incomplete. So every one of us, that's why she says, every human being has a necessity, the need to translate into physical form what it feels and wants internally. So we have all aspirations. I make sakar, somebody makes a hospital, somebody makes a school. Why do we make all that? It's not just for the sake of making money, it's not just sake of getting popularity and name. It is the urge, it is the need. So man really cannot sit quiet just with an inner aspiration. It always requires an outer form. Now it may be said that the need to adopt or follow or participate in a religion as it is found all ready-made arises rather from the herd instinct in human beings. Now this is another new light. You see, we all call ourselves Hindus or Christians or Muslims or whatever. She is asking, why do you call yourself a Hindu or a Muslim or a Christian? Just because you are born into a family like that? It has no meaning. This tendency of carrying over that I am a Hindu because my father was a Hindu, that's a herd instinct. You see, we have this instinct in the animals, herd instinct. So we have the same instinct to call ourselves Hindus or Muslims or Christians because of our family. What's wrong if a Brahmin child calls himself a Brahmin, Shudra's child calls himself a Shudra? But Aurobindo says, no, that's a wrong thing. It's not the birth that gives you the category. It's your nature, it's your svabhava, it's your swadharma. So too, let's not be Hindus because of our family background. This is just a herd instinct. The true thing would be for each one to find that form of adoration or cult which is his own and expresses spontaneously and individually his own special relation with the divine. That would be the ideal condition. So this, again, you see, what I admire here is the Mother has given us the freedom to choose our own divinity. She is not saying, you must stick to Mother and Aurobindo, you must stick to Ganesha and Krishna. No. You may be born perchance into a Christian family, but if you find a greater affiliation with another Hindu god or with another Hindu guru, you can change it. But religion and our churches and our temples will not allow that. So, oh my God, that means you have left our creed, you have left Hinduism, you have been converted, and there is a stigma over that person. But true spirituality is, you must find your own dharma, your own affiliation, your own attraction. That's how I see, as I was telling you, I don't know if I shared with you, long back I was in Bangladesh. There were 7 days of talk there. And in the talks, of course, I spoke on Mother and Aurobindo, Savitri and Life Divine and Synthesis, because they were supposed to have been introduced to Mother and Aurobindo's thought. And one thing, of course, was the condition was I should speak in Bengali. Well, thanks to my wife, I could manage that. Whatever, 6 to 7 hours of talks. They were very interesting, both sides for me as well as them. But what was important was, there was a good crowd of about 300. It was an open field. Amongst the 300, a minimum of 200 were Muslims. Some came dressed in their burqas and it was easy to understand. And the organizers themselves said, most of the persons coming to these talks are Muslims. So I could not understand how could they come to SOY Aurobindo and to so-called Hindu thought. In fact, speaking about Hindu thought, there was once a correspondence between SOY Aurobindo and another Muslim gentleman who was living in the ashram. He was blaming SOY Aurobindo that all your philosophy, your tradition, your customs are all Hindu, and your writing itself is Hindu. SOY Aurobindo says no. It happens to be that I've used Hindi terminology, call it Brahman or Purusha or Shakti. He says if you want to write using some other terminology, it doesn't matter to me. But a terminology that should carry the same meaning, the same depth of experience. Instead of Brahman, you say Allah, it doesn't matter to SOY Aurobindo. So he says, don't call me Hindu because I've used the word Brahman. You can use the word Allah or Jehovah, it doesn't matter. But it should have the concept and the experience. So these Muslims, when I asked them, how come you are able to come, doesn't your religion sort of pounce on you and all the jihad and all the, they can be very strict. So I asked a Muslim gentleman when I was free. He said, sir, I have no problem. We have no problem. How? He says, look, our aim is to go to Allah. So we are not changing the aim. But the path to go to Allah is integral yoga. So what's wrong with that? So we have chosen this path to go to Allah. So we have not betrayed our religion. There is a kind of a good synthesis. And the path they have given is one path that SOY Aurobindo has given is another path. But our aim is to reach and realize Allah, but the path is integral yoga. So we have kind of made a synthesis. And even on Fridays they go to whatever their masjid, they can go here and there. And the only thing that they could not or did not or want to take was, right in the beginning of the program, the organizers had done this way that there was a big picture of Mother and SOY Aurobindo on the stage. And everyone was supposed to go and put a few flowers in front of them. Go in a queue and put some flowers. That's one thing they didn't participate in. They said no. This kind of an external worship, because their masjid and all that, they do not have any of this external worship of the flowers and all that. But at the same time, they do a lot of decoration of dargahs, but not in the masjid. So they said we can never put a flower or a garland to the Mother and SOY Aurobindo. So you see, they have made a good kind of sieving out what is important and what is not important. And another thing that they told me, and I really liked it, they said the procedure of meditation that you have is something universal. It's neither Aurobindian, not Hindu, not Christian, nor Islam. Because we are all looking into ourselves. So this myself is me. Maybe I am a Muslim or a Christian, doesn't matter. So they have adapted the question of meditation, and they have adapted this path of giving. When we say surrender to the divine, they say surrender to Allah. So they just translated the word divine and Brahman with Allah, but they are taking to this path. So what we see is what the Mother is telling us: if you are truly sincere, if you are truly honest and not honest, sincere and self-giving, you will surely reach the divine irrespective of what religion you follow. This is one thing that I wanted to tell you. And then we come back to the text here, which we were following yesterday. And to recapitulate before I take up the new para. So after learning about this question of the triple level of worship and what is important, etc., we remember SOY Aurobindo had said, it is the inner offering of the heart's adoration, the soul of it in the symbol, the spirit of it in the act, that's the very life of this sacrifice. If the offering is to be complete and universal, then a turning of all our emotions to the divine is imperative. This is the intensest way of purification. Now, this is where we need to learn from the mother. A psychic fire within must be lit, into which all is thrown with the divine name upon it. In that fire, all the emotions are compelled to cast off their grosser elements, and those that are undivine perversions are burned away. Now, this was the last line we were discussing yesterday. That in this consecration, what do you mean by this consecration and surrender? So, one is the external consecration and surrender when you go to the mother's picture, or when you go to Krishna, or when you go to any deity. That is the external act, where you have the action itself of giving. But here, in this yoga, there is this psychic being. So she is telling us, or Aurobindo is writing to us, that you have a psychic fire within, must be lit, into which all is thrown with the divine name. So our consecration need not be to anything or anybody external. Because remember what's happening. If I want to consecrate, say I am sitting in a train, and at that moment I really want to close my eyes and consecrate, or offer whatever, as I said, offer your thoughts, your feelings, your emotions. Now if your photograph of the mother is missing, it becomes inconvenient. Say, where is the photograph? You have to pull out from your blessing bag and put the photograph. So this is very inconvenient, and it becomes almost religious. So they have given us a universal thing, to saying the psychic fire within must be lit, and to that psychic fire you offer. So what happens? You can practice this yoga anywhere, everywhere, at all times. You don't depend on anything external, be it a symbol or a guru's picture or a guru's statue or a temple, nothing. But constantly the fire is within. And then somebody asked the question, yesterday we missed on this, that's why I want to read it out. When we talk about the psychic fire within must be lit, somebody says, isn't the psychic fire always lit? Because we say psychic being is always something that is there burning. And then the mother says, it is not always lit. The psychic fire is not always lit. Then how to light it? Mother's answer, by aspiration, by the will for progress, by the urge towards perfection. Above all, it is a will for progress and self-purification which lights the fire. The will for progress. Those who have a strong will, when they turn it towards spiritual progress and purification, automatically light the fire within themselves. You see, these are some of the notions that we must clear within in our thinking. That the moment we say psychic, we say, oh, its light is there, we say the psychic being is always lit. But then what is the use of this giving offering? You see, it is our consecration that lights the fire. It is, and why do you want to consecrate all your acts? What we said was for purification. It is always the fire that purifies. So may it be the psychic fire or the fire outside. When you put the iron rod, it burns and purifies. Similarly, for our purification, it is the psychic fire. So we may have, as Aurobindo writes, you have aspiration, rejection and surrender, the famous 3 words. But all of us, or most of us, not all of us, many of us, most of us, we stop at the first level of aspiration. We hardly ever consciously go through the process of purification. We go from aspiration to surrender. But as we have seen in the synthesis in the later chapters, you cannot aspire or surrender beyond a point if you do not have the purification. So purification is a must. You see, in the beginning you have this great elan that I want to practice yoga, I want to consecrate to the mother, I am doing the mother's work. These are all fine, it's all, but It's stage A. We have to move on. But how do we move on? Without the necessary purification. That's why Sri Aurobindo calls it the rejection comes in between. Without the process of rejection or purification, you can neither surrender fully nor aspire much. It's all, as we say, elementary. But if you want to go to the higher level, higher grade, you have to go through the process of purification. And how do you purify? And what do you purify? Well, there is a whole lot of things to purify within our own nature. There's all the negative things, passions and anger and whatnot, and jealousies and wrath. All these things which are there must be purified. Otherwise, we will not be able to advance in sadhana. You see, we had great sadhaks in the ashram. Those who have gone, some of them even reached the supramental consciousness. How did they do that? They had to go through the process of purification. You see a lot of Sri Aurobindo's letters to Sri Aurobindo the Mother. People are struggling to purify their lower nature, the outer nature. And you see Mother and Sri Aurobindo's answers to them. So that only shows that all this sadhana without the effort of purification is a dead end. You come to a point, then you are living in a fool's paradise. Okay, I'm doing Mother's work. Okay, I'm aspiring to the Mother. Okay, I'm going to the Samadhi. Okay, I'm going to the Matra Mandir. But this is all the external work, as we said, the external physical worship. But the second step, the third step, will come only with purification. So there it says, there's a constant, absolute necessity of offering the things into the psychic fire. And what is the psychic fire? We have seen it is not lit, but it gets lit when we start offering. And each defect one wants to cure, or each progress one wants to make, if all that is thrown into the fire, it burns with a new intensity. And this is not an image, it's a fact in the subtle physical. Just as we throw wood into the fire and then suddenly we see the fire coming up. But also, it depends what kind of wood you are throwing into the fire. It can be damp wood, it could be dry wood, it could be burnt wood, it could be dirty wood. So you see, if you throw, Sri Aurobindo would say, if you throw damp wood, instead of the fire there is smoke. So all this, she says, is not an image or poetry that you put wood into the fire and the fire lights up. It's a fact. One can feel the warmth of the flame. One can see in the subtle physical the light of the flame. And when there is something in the nature which prevents one from advancing and one throws it into this fire, it begins to burn and the flame becomes more intense. So we see that this is question of this putting into the fire. There are two practical things out of that. The psychic fire is available to us at all times, wherever you are. So if it is there, then you can constantly offer. Number one. Number two, out of this offering, there are two things that are happening. One is your whole lower nature is getting purified. Number two, is that the psychic flame itself is increasing, is growing. So you see, when we speak about the psychic evolution of the psychic being, it was so small at Angushta Matre, and then it goes becoming bigger and bigger. How does it become bigger? How does the flame become larger and higher? By this consecration of the fuel. And so if in sadhana we need to have the psychic realization, it's not just through meditation or just singing bhajans and all the devotional songs. What is most practical is to put firewood. And what is the firewood? Is our acts. And fortunately or unfortunately, we are all the time acting. Some action or the other. It can be writing poetry, writing essays, playing football, or going to computer, or going to the hospital, going to become a doctor or engineer. But fortunately, our nature is full of this action. And every act is a log of wood for the psychic being. So the more you throw this wood into the psychic plane, the more it increases. You see, it's so wonderfully inbuilt. So this yoga is not just theory. We can know a lot of things, we can speak a lot of things. But then people say, sir, how do we go about it? Is there any do's and don'ts? There's no do's and don'ts. There's no hourly timetable. But a very simple thing that as much as possible, as many times as possible, throw your acts, your feelings, your sensations, your thoughts into the psychic fire. I mean, that's one line and be all and the end all. After that, there are many things that take place. And one of the things that really takes place on the outer level, that as this psychic fire increases, there are two things that happen. One is the sense of unity. What Sri Aurobindo calls here the ideal of brotherhood. You see, we all speak of great brotherhood and humanity, and of course we have Aurobindo here itself, which is having human unity as its ideal. But try to understand. Now I understand the why of Aurobindo. Well, we will say it's a city that the earth needs, it's an international city, and all the things that you can quote for that. But on the metaphysical level, it's a very simple truth. If you want human unity, you must have the psychic realization within you. That means the mother and Sri Aurobindo are looking upon Aurobindo as that penultimate stage of human evolution where people will be spiritualized. You cannot have human unity with all the exhibitions, with all the panda, with all the advertisement, with all the structures, with all human nature. This is all the preliminary stage, when we start building a house, how much of earth digging we have to do, and all the muck that comes out, the dirt comes out, then there's a foundation stone, then there's building. Much later, you see the top and the roof. Similarly, Aurobindo has to pass through all the cleansing of the muck that's there in the ground. Because it is only on a spiritual level, and spiritual means psychic realization. So this is the message that we get, that Aurobindo is being built for a human stage of evolution much later, when humanity would reach the spiritual level where there would be the psychic realization. So all this otherwise is a mental ideal, emotional sympathy. I am an Aurobillian, I go meditate in Matri Mandir and all that. This is all our external paraphernalia we need to satisfy ourselves. Otherwise, as I was telling, you can do meditation in Matri Mandir or Samadhi or under the banyan tree or in your own room. It doesn't matter. So, on the outer level, what is important is the two things, as I said. One is the human unity that will increase, and the other is the sense of immortality. The psychic realization gives you these two senses, these two effects on the outer life. The sense of immortality means is not that the body will not suffer. Body, as long as it is not transformed or is not under the influence of the psychic being, it will have its suffering. But the sense of immortality means we do not have the fear of death. You see, all of us suffer the fear of death in some form or the other. But if we have the psychic realization, one of the first things you say is, this is not the end of my incarnation. I had previously so many forms, I've taken one form now, again I'll take forms in the future. So this question of my life being limited to this form, that somehow that gets blasted. And you say, no, I am immortal, I have been, I am, I shall be. So this sense comes very strongly, and that is why a lot of our saints, sannyasins, they live in the psychic consciousness. They do not bother about this body or anything. Of course, in Sri Aurobindo is different, but these are the two things. So that's where we were explaining yesterday, that there is the brotherhood ideal comes in, there is a sense of harmony that comes in, and all that because of the psychic being. Now lastly, This is, I stopped yesterday at this because we have to enter into a completely new phase. A new phase, almost a new thought that comes in. Now he explains the importance of the psychic being. Having said that all this is based on the psychic being, now he will tell us what exactly is the psychic being, what exactly is this soul, what is its nature, how does it act, how does it influence. So there are many things like this. Now for that, those of you, I don't see anybody having books, maybe a couple of you, you can turn back to the previous chapter, and purposely I did not do that those couple of paragraphs because I wanted to do them here in this chapter. Now in the previous chapter there are paragraphs beginning with, it is the very nature of the soul or the psychic being to turn towards the divine truth as the sunflower to the sun. Well, if you have the book, please turn to that. I will take it up from there. But maybe I think we will start afresh here, because once I take up the psychic being, we will go to the end of this morning. So maybe today we will take an earlier break, and after tea I will take up the description of the psychic being. So we will have a break. We are about 10:05, about 10 minutes we will take a break and come back. After that I will take up the psychic being. Well, I will take up the 2 pages from the ascent of the sacrifice number 1, and I might tell you that if ever you want to know about the psychic being, its functioning and its nature, its role, I think these 3 pages are one of the most intense pages. This is page 138 to 141. The last paragraphs of this chapter on the ascent of the sacrifice number 1. In brief, you will not get a better description of the psychic being. So I will run through, but just stop wherever is required, because you will understand it clearly. But as Aurobindo is going to take up the function of the psychic being in our own chapter number 2, I thought I should make it clear a little bit. So it's the very nature of the soul or the psychic being to turn towards the divine truth as the sunflower to the sun. It accepts and clings to all that is divine or progressing towards divinity, and draws back from all that is a perversion or a denial of it, from all that is false and undivine. Yet the soul is at first but a spark, and then a little flame of Godhead burning in the midst of a great darkness. For the most part it is veiled in its inner sanctum, and to reveal itself it has to call on the mind, the life force and the physical consciousness, and persuade them as best as they can to express it. Ordinarily it succeeds at most in suffusing their outwardness with its inner light and modifying with its purifying fineness their dark obscurities or their coarser mixture. Even when there is a formed psychic being able to express itself with some directness in life, it is still in all but a smaller portion of the thing, no bigger in the mass of the body than the thumb of a man, was the image used by the ancient seers, and it is not always able to prevail against the obscurity and ignorant smallness of the physical consciousness, the mistaken sureness of the mind, or the arrogance of the vehemence of the vital nature. The soul is obliged to accept the human mental, emotive, sensational life as it is, its relations, its activities, its cherished forms and figures. It has to labor to disengage and increase a divine element in all this relative truth mixed with continual falsifying error. This love turned to the uses of the animal body or the satisfaction of the vital ego, this life of an average manhood shot with rare and pale glimpses of Godhead and the darker dualities of the demon and the brute. Well, just to give you a few summary ideas, it's true that all of us, we have soul, the psychic being. But how much is it active? How much are we aware of it? See, as he puts it here, the soul is at first but a spark in the midst of great darkness. It is veiled in its inner sanctum, and to reveal itself it has to call on the mind. So try to imagine the sanctum sanctorum of our own Indian temples. What we say, the Garbhagriha. You see, when we go deep in, you see that whole place is dark. We have the Vigraha, the statue, the idol of the god. But it's hardly visible. Nowadays they have got all these tube lights and focus lights and floodlights. But in those ancient times, the temple was there was only diyas, deepams. You could scarcely see it. So it was surrounded by this darkness. So too our own soul is in a region of darkness. Why darkness? Because this darkness is created by these veils of the mind, the vital and the physical. The soul is surrounded, in fact imprisoned, if I can say, by the subtle physical, the subtle mind and the subtle physical and the subtle emotion, and then the gross body. So it is actually a prisoner within 7 walls. These walls of the outer physical, outer mind, outer vital, then the inner mind, the inner physical, inner vital, and then there is the another subliminal. So there are walls within walls, and then the ultimate shrine at the chamber, there is a soul. So that is why our life is so very difficult, because neither the soul is able to come to help us, nor are we able to go to the soul, because of these walls in between. And the poor soul, he says, it succeeds at most in suffusing their outwardness with an inner light, with his inner light, and modifying with his purifying fineness. You see, with all the divine intensity and purity and light it has, it still cannot penetrate these walls. The picture is so clear. Maybe we have an artist sitting at the back, Bhupul. You should draw a beautiful painting of that. You see, it is trying to radiate, but the light is getting obstructed by these walls. And the best light that can come out is in fits and starts. Sometimes my heart is open, sometimes my mind is open. So a spark from within comes out, hits my mind, hits my heart, and then I feel great, I feel beautiful. So those are the little sparks that sometimes they escape, if I can say, these walls. Otherwise, most of the times, this wall of mind, this wall of physical, this wall of the vital is constantly concentrating upon itself. So they will say, I am not ready to allow somebody else to rule me or to influence me. I have my own needs, I am my own boss. I don't need anyone's help. So these 3 layers, outer and the 3 layers inner, which refuse to be infused with the light of the psychic being. So there is this constant struggle between the inner and the outer. So we are not able to do all that, and it is not always able to prevail against the obscurity and ignorant smallness of the physical consciousness, the mistaken sureness of the mind, and the arrogance and the vehemence of the vital nature. It's a beautiful 3 words. Why is it that the soul doesn't succeed in coming out? Because it cannot succeed against the mistaken sureness of the mind and the ignorant smallness of the physical consciousness. You see, the physical consciousness, the mental consciousness, the vital consciousness, they are so sure about themselves that what we are thinking is right, what I am feeling is right, my body personality is right, my body's needs are right. So there is an arrogance and a vehemence in our own insistence on our own falsehood. And God is the last person to force himself upon us. That's why it's called the psychic call is a whisper, it doesn't shout. The psychic being is a very gentle, small voice. Because it says, if you want to listen to me, you be quiet. The psychic being is not going to loudly call you, say, hey, do that or don't do that. Because of the stupidities of this mistaken sureness of the mind. You see, the mind is such an instrument, it is so sure, because it is rationally this is the approach. Mentally I am strong, I have a great intellectual capacity. So all the time it is really thinking it is right. And of course, the vital, the arrogance and vehemence of the vital. This soul is obliged to accept the human mental, emotive, sensational life. The word is obliged. See, you understand the meaning of the word obliged. You see, it cannot help it. Because after all, it's like saying, you are the guest in the body. The body is telling the soul, you are my guest. So you have to obey what I am saying. If you come to Sakar guest house and be our guest, you have to follow the rules of the guest house. So a guest is always having a kind of a little disadvantage because he has to follow the rules of the place, the guest house. You come to this guest house, it closes at 10 o'clock, Golconda closes at 8 o'clock, somebody closes at 7 o'clock, these are the rules. You go to Golconda, you see the rules. You cannot go in with your chappals, you cannot call in your friends into your rooms. That means every guest house has its own rules and you cannot break them. So the soul is a guest in this body. That's what we think. Although there will be a time when we come to know that soul is the owner of this body, not the guest in this body. But at present, we say, you are my guest, you follow my rules. So that is the reverse that has taken place, unfortunately. So the poor soul is obliged to accept all these relations, activities, cherished forms and figures of ignorance. So what will the guest do? He will say, yes, whatever rules are there, I will follow. It may not like it. So your friendship, your relations, your arrogance, your stupidities, your attachment, your attractions, says, all right, Baba, I will accept. What can it do? Why? Because it needs them ultimately for its instrumentation. You see, the soul has come into this body because it wants to use this mental, physical and vital as its instruments. So right from day one, if you say, hey, I am the boss, it doesn't work. I run Sakar. If I insist saying I am the director and all of you are my employees, nobody works. People may work, but there's no joy, there's no happiness. So the soul also in the beginning says, all right, all your ignorance, all your stupidities, all your relations, all your attractions, all your lower nature, welcome. It gives a kind of a long rope, as you say. So in the beginning, you see this, that's why we are never spiritual when we are young. Why? When we grow, that's not a guarantee, but there's a possibility that as we grow older, then we begin to realize, my God, These are all instruments, these are guests. The soul is not the guest, the soul is the real owner of this body, and my mind, body, life are only instruments. But that comes after a lot of experience, lot of, what you say, suffering and misery. That's why, as I was telling in the young, when you are young, you think, I am the master, I don't even think of the soul because I have my mind, my arrogant mind, my vehement psychic being, my stupid physical. So you see, whole mode of thinking is opposite. Now I feel in the young age, I am the master, the soul is my guest. As you grow older, it becomes reverse. The soul becomes the owner, the soul becomes the reality, the soul becomes the aim, and then the interest of your physical, the vital, the mental, all these things drop. So no, they are there to serve the master. So this is the beauty here. It says in the beginning it accepts. It has to labor and to disengage and increase the divine element. This love turned to the uses of the animal body or the satisfaction of the vital ego. This all these darker luridities of the demon and the brute, everything it accepts. See, it's a very beautiful relation which in Savitri Aurobindo explained between Purusha and Prakriti. He says in the beginning Purusha accepts the Prakriti. The soul accepts everything of Prakriti, everything of nature, including its darker luridities and its animal body uses, a luck turn to this falsifying, everything. He just says, keep on, go on, I will not disturb you. So Prakriti thinks that it's the master. You see, the whole problem is the soul gives us so much freedom to follow our own stupidities and urges and lower nature that we begin to feel that I am the master and soul is my slave. So Prakriti says, I am the master. But this is only a play, the divine play. Because Prakriti, when it thinks it's the master, it acts in such a way, it gets into suffering and sorrow. And then when there are slaps from nature, remember that pain is the hammer of God. So when there's pain, physical, mental, vital, at that time Prakriti says, my God, I'm suffering so much. I need somebody's help. That time Prakriti turns around and says, hey Purusha, can you help me? I'm suffering so much. So through pain and suffering and sorrow, all this freedom of Prakriti turns round to Purusha. I mean, this is the raison d'etre of pain and suffering. The earlier we turn to the inner being, the better, the lesser the suffering and sorrow. But human nature is so, in Hindi we say deed, stubborn. It keeps on getting the repeated suffering, sorrow and the pain and all that. But the psychic being telling us, I am giving you this suffering so that you may turn back to me. But mother would explain, on the contrary, people will say, oh, I had this suffering because of this person saying this thing, so it's all right, this person is not there. I have had this pain because I had an accident. So all the time we give some cause, some excuse and get away with it. So after 2 months, after 2 weeks, after 2 days, the suffering comes back. But what is the purpose of pain? The pain is the hammer of God sculpting man to his greatness. I mean, that's a golden line right across all beams of every house. It is the hammer of God sculpting man to greatness. Why, how, and why greatness? The greatness is turning to the divine. So we don't. Our stubborn nature, we keep on until there is a major calamity. We never ever turn inwards. So Aurobindo is telling us, unerring in the essence of its will, it is obliged often under the pressure of its instruments to submit to mistakes of action, wrong placements of feeling, wrong choice of person, errors in the exact form of its will, in the circumstances of its expression of the infallible inner ideal. This explains why we have so many problems. error of wrong persons. We choose a person for our life partner. So the soul says, all right, go ahead. It accepts all that wrong choice of persons, errors in the exact form of its will, wrong placement of feeling. I mean, sometimes we blame ourselves, oh, the mother is there, why didn't the mother protect me? I was going to this person, I was doing this action, I was doing that. The mother should have protected me, she should have really stopped me from all these things. We blame the mother, we blame God, we blame the soul. But sure, that's very clear. It is obliged often under the pressure of its instruments to submit. Because as we said, neither the mother nor the soul will ever emphasize, will ever dictate. They suggest, show the direction, and if you don't listen, it's your will, your choice. So let us not be under this illusion, oh, mother is there, so I will be protected from every nonsense I make in my life. The soul says, sorry, I'll accept. I'll submit to your mistakes. So there is, all the time there's this infinite patience. That's why people get older, and it is only in their so-called older age that we begin to see. Why do you say we become calmer, quieter, so-called wiser? There's no wisdom anywhere, it's just that we begin to realize who is the real master. The soul or the instruments, me or the soul. So the sooner we submit to the master's soul and say, Lord, O soul, you are the master, I am only instrument, the better. Otherwise, it's all terrible. Yet is there a divination within it which makes it a surer guide than the reason or than ever the highest desire, etc. So, the soul is a prisoner of its own instruments. And the instruments, they act as the masters. So that is how life goes on from the youth, from your youth to you become older, middle age, and even then you may not realize, some people may go on. But that is the advantage. If you read Sri Aurobindo, if you read the Mother, if you read Bhagavad Gita, if you read the scriptures, at least mentally you know. You may not be able to follow it at your age because the instruments are your master. But at least at a time when the instrument wants to know who is the real master, you said, yes, I think I read in Bhagavad Gita something like that. Yes, Sri Aurobindo has said something. So at least you have the knowledge. Most of the common people don't have even that much knowledge. So they go on into the end of their life. But for us, we are fortunate, somebody has told us this is a wrong path. So, that's why in spite of knowing the mother for decades together, many people have not transformed. They may say, I've been in the ashram 50 years, 60 years, 70 years, but you still see their nature untransformed. Because of this elemental thing, that they are still following the instruments and not the psychic being. And then later in the next paragraph, at a certain stage in the yoga, when the mind is sufficiently quietened and no longer supports itself at every step on the sufficiency of its mental certitudes, when the vital has been steadied and subdued and is no longer constantly insistent on its own rash will, demand and desire, when the physical has been sufficiently altered not to bury altogether the inner flame under the mass of its outwardness, obscurity or inertia, an inmost being hidden within and felt only in its rare influences is able to come forward and illumine the rest and take up the lead of the sadhana. This is the sadhana. Lot of us people want to do sadhana. How do we do that? I mean, when I read this, so much of our mental notions get cleared. I mean, we are really living in a fool's paradise. All the time interpreting things to suit my vital, my mental, my physical. It's only Aurobindo says at a certain stage in the sadhana, in yoga, later, not just you have to be 66 years or 64 or 54 or 74. It's not precisely with age, it's not age connected, but a stage of yoga where it says mind is sufficiently quieted, the vital is sufficiently subdued, and the physical has been sufficiently altered. So this comes out of sadhana. Why is it that we are asked to do the surrender of the mental, surrender of the vital, surrender of the physical? So the sooner they quieten, the sooner they become silent, the sooner they become subdued. Otherwise our vital is a wild horse. It's difficult and impossible to subdue it. But the sooner you put reins on it, and then the sooner the physical has been sufficiently altered not to bury altogether the inner flame under the mass of its outwardness, obscurity and inertia. You see, why do we say live in a simple manner? Have a simple life. It's not asceticism. It's not a question of shunning wealth, shunning beauty, shunning all that. But a simplicity of life at least takes you away what Aurobindo calls as a mass of its outwardness, obscurity and inertia. You see, all the time we live outwardly with the things outside. We go to the super bazaars, we go to the eateries, there's a constant engagement of the physical in the outer. So when is there time for the psychic being to come out? When do we have time to go within? The physical is drawing out, the vital is, as he puts it, subdued, is a wild horse. I mean, just let your imagination go out and see what kind of a being are we. The mental is ransacked with ideas, the vital is like a wild horse, the physical is constantly jammed with the outward things. So we are a creature which is completely in a turmoil, completely in a we are not one person. I mean, we may think I'm going quietly and looking at him, smiling at him, but see your own inner being. There's never any harmony, any uniformity, any quietness. You may externally have a beautiful smile and say, yes, how are you? But inwardly we are a storm, a being in a storm. So Aurobindo says, when all this is quietened, then the soul comes forward and then take lead of the sadhana. Its character is a one-pointed orientation towards the divine or the highest, one-pointed and yet plastic in action and movement. So this is the basic thing. The one of the signs, as I was telling you, if the psychic being is coming forward in your being, is that there is a one-pointedness in your life. So when you say, I'll work for the mother, I want to reach the psychic being. So you see, all the rest of the things are like following the engine called the psychic being, and the rest of them are all bogies now lined up. Others previously, every bogie was separate and every track was separate, vital track, mental track, physical track. But now at least they are all onto one track and say, Lord, my soul, you lead, we will follow. So that is the one-pointedness. And then, secondly, it sees the divine essence everywhere but rejects the mere mask and the disfiguring and disguising figure. It insists on truth, on will and strength and mastery, on joy and love and beauty, but on a truth of abiding knowledge that surpasses the mere practical momentary truth of the ignorance. Well, this is the character of the psychic being. Now I'll come to the para where how does it work, how does it influence. This is very beautiful here. But the most intimate character of the psychic is its pressure towards the divine through a sacred love, joy and oneness. It is the divine love that it seeks most. It is the love of the divine that is its spur, its goal, its star of truth, shining over the luminous cave of the nascent or the still obscure cradle of the newborn Godhead within us. In the first long stage of its growth and immature existence, it has leaned on earthly love, affection, tenderness, goodwill, compassion, benevolence, on all beauty and gentleness and fineness and light and strength and courage, on all that can help to refine and purify the grossness and commonness of human nature. Now here, why I am reading this is there are 3 stages of the psychic growth. Page 140 of this, my volume is, I don't know if you have this volume. SABCL page 146. Now this is very, very important just to gauge ourselves and see, hey, at what stage am I in my sadhana? Am I just routinely going about my work and my duties and my timetable? Or is something happening with me? You need to ask ourselves, we need to ask ourselves. And so here are the 3 levels which are very clear. First level, when the psychic being leans on earthly love, affection, tenderness, goodwill, compassion, benevolence, etc. So the first level, it accepts the human connections, earthly love, earthly relations, earthly affection, tenderness. I mean, all that is happening among the human beings in our so-called higher nature. When we love each other, we have goodwill for each other, we have tenderness for each other, where we have compassion and benevolence, on all beauty and gentleness and fineness and light and strength and courage, and all that can help to refine and purify the grossness. You see, we take to art, we take to music, we take to singing, we take to dancing, we take to this creation. Everything that can refine. But mind you, all this is still the human level. So what do we understand? On the first level, on level 1, it is still attached to the human level, but the higher human faculties. So we need to have this higher level. Why do we say that we should listen to beautiful music and not to all the jang songs, the songs of the Hindi songs or English songs, Bollywood songs or Collywood songs or Tollywood songs? You see, that is also songs. But there's a difference between songs and music. Aurobindo would say music, the role of music is to quieten your vital. On the contrary, any music that kicks you up, that kind of brings you in the name of rhythm and this, and we dance and jump and all, that's also music, but not music that will help you in this sadhana. That's why we ought to distinguish what kind of a music am I following. You may say, no sir, this is the modern thing, this is the modern. Fine, go ahead. But there will be a time when you will realize you will not have any more taste for that. Because that's why our Indian ragas, Indian music, is so very sublime, because the moment the first note comes out, it has a stilling effect. It stills your being. It quietens your being. So we listen to Indian ragas, our mother's music, which has this effect of ingathering. Any of this Bollywood music is the effect of outgoing. Instead of coming towards a psychic being, you are going out into the world, into this. So that is the ill effect. It is a reality, I know. But we are speaking about sadhana. So it is this, there is the refinement and a purity of the grossness and commonness of human nature. But it knows how mixed are these human movements at their best and at their worst, how fallen and stamped with the mark of ego and self-deceptive sentimental falsehood, and the lower self profiting by the imitation of a soul movement. But the soul, that's what we should be clear, while accepting, consenting, giving permission to Prakriti, it says all these are only temporary. I know these are not right. It is aware, otherwise if the soul is also lost, well, many a time it is lost. It is lost in the movements of nature. It is blind, it becomes blinded to Prakriti. But if we can be having that inner awakening, or I would say alertness, I am doing this, I am allowing this, like the parent, it allows the child to do something wrong because it says, okay, let them experience. But when the child falls down and hurts his knee and the knee bleeds, then he will run back to mommy and say, mommy, I got hurt. So until then, if you say, don't do that, the child will run, do whatever he wants. And otherwise, if you say, mommy, you're a dictator, you don't allow me. So papa and mommy say, better you go and do what you want. When you're hurt, then only turn back. So the soul, it knows that it is allowing Prakriti to do all that. It is aware all the time. Then second stage, at once emerging, it is ready and eager to break all the old ties and imperfect emotional activities and replace them by a greater spiritual truth of love and oneness. It may still admit the human forms and movements, but on condition that they are turned towards the one alone. It accepts only the ties that are helpful, the heart's reverence for the Guru, the union of the God seekers, a spiritual compassion for the ignorant human and animal world and its peoples, the joy and happiness and satisfaction of beauty that comes from the perception of the divine everywhere. This is the second stage of the psychic growth. What is it? It is ready and eager to break all the old ties and imperfect emotional activities and replace them by a greater spiritual truth. So this is the inner withdrawal, where it says, I don't want any other outer relation. It's fine. I have given permission to my Prakriti, but suddenly there is a withdrawal. Withdrawal of the permission. It's not the withdrawal you become ascetic. Withdrawal of the permission and the consent it has given to Prakriti, and that of course the higher level of Prakriti, not the lower level of Prakriti. So all that is withdrawn and then replace them by a greater spiritual truth of love and oneness. It may still admit the human forms and movements, but this is what is important. That's why I said it's not ascetic movement. It is a withdrawal, an inner withdrawal, but admit the human forms and movements, but on condition that they are turned toward the one alone. So now you want to rechart your relations. You say, I will be friends with this, I will admit with this relation, I will have this contact, I will have this painting, I will listen to this music, I will do this art, I will go to this market. But all the time selecting that which is moving towards the divine. That means you have companionship, friendship only with those who are attempting, trying to go to the one supreme, to the Divine Mother. You say, these people, no, they are not at all anywhere near the attempt to go to the divine. But these people, yes, they are trying. And maybe I like to be with them. I can still connect with them. So there is a kind of a, you start selection. Selecting not on the good and the bad, there is nothing like that. But only those who are on the path towards the divine, that means those who are doing sadhana, those who are doing, and those who are lost in their material life, in their vital life. You said, well, till yesterday I had accepted them, but today I think they are no more a company anymore for my onward march. So the first level, all were good, all relations, all attempts, all activities, but the higher level. Second level, only those who are on the path, if I can say the word, the others not interested. It must still admit the forms. It accepts only the ties that are helpful, the heart's reverence for the Guru, the union of the God seekers, a spiritual compassion for the ignorant human and animal world. So that's what I was telling. You go to an ashram, you go to a community where there are your so-called Guru Bhais, reverence for the Guru, the union of the God seekers. So that is why we come to ashram, that's why we seek our own friends when we go to a center in Calcutta or Hyderabad or Bangalore, because we find a similarity of God seeking there. It's not that somebody is seeking Satya Sai Baba, somebody is seeking Ramakrishna, somebody is seeking, they're all seeking. But here there is a kind of a little harmony, a little unity among these Aurobindonians. We may be all on different grades, but still, if one is sincere in one's attempt, we say, I will have to go to Sri Aurobindo Ashram. Whatever the people may be, or I will have to go to the Sri Aurobindo Ashram in Cuttack or in Bhubaneswar or in Bangalore or Calcutta or Hyderabad. But you are seeking these God seekers who are having the same aim and the direction. That's second. And then it plunges next one, third level. It plunges the nature inward towards its meeting with the immanent divine in the secret, in the heart's secret center. And while that call is there, no reproach of egoism, no mere outward summons of altruism or duty or philanthropy or service will deceive or divert it from its sacred longing and its obedience to the attraction of the divinity within it. It lifts the being toward the transcendent ecstasy and is ready to shed all the downward pull of the world from its wings in its uprising to reach the one highest. But it calls down also this transcendent love and beauty and beatitude to deliver and transform this world of hatred and strife and division and darkness and jarring ignorance. But that is the beautiful third level, beautiful one sentence. It plunges the nature inward towards its meeting with the immanent divine in the heart's secret center. So the third level, it goes so deep within itself. You see, slowly it is moving out from the outer world. It was completely involved in the outer world, selected involvement. Third level, no involvement. He is too deep for words, too deep for relations, too deep for outer world. So he beautifully puts it, it plunges into the heart's secret center. And no reproach of egoism, no mere outward summons of altruism. So this stage is not even showing up saying, look, I am a sannyasin, I am a yogi, don't touch me, don't come to me, I am in my psychic being. There is no such egoism, no such showmanship. And it does not say, well, I am a saint now, I am a yogi, you come to my blessings. Nothing of the sort. It hardly even speaks about it. People may not even understand. But each time outwardly it is there, I mean, at all times it is down there, and then it says, it lifts the being towards the transcendent ecstasy and is ready to shed all the downward pull of the world from its wings in its uprising to reach the one highest. So this is a complete detachment with the world. World, objects, subjects, relations, emotions, attachments, everything. He says, now let nobody pull me down. As he puts it, the word lovely is pull the world from its wings, downward pull of the world from its wings. He says, now I am moving up or down, whatever words we want to use. He says, now don't come to me. But it is not a notice board written anywhere. He is doing it quietly, but just sharing out all these relations. Anything that pulls you down, he says, avoid it. So we have a lot of sadhaks in the ashram who are at this stage, who are quiet. But please remember, it has nothing to do with age. It's not because you are 87, you are 78 that you are at this stage. On the contrary, long age takes away this fervor of a spirituality, because the body consciousness comes out so strongly, vehemently, that this zeal for spiritual life, the zeal for the inner psychic being, it gets clouded and dampened. So on the contrary, one should not think because I am now 85 years, I am a senior man, I am a sadhu and sannyasi. Nothing to do with age. On the contrary, you should do that as early as possible in your own age, so that before the body consciousness plumps you down. Because with age, what happens? All the faculties decrease, the instrument become weak, and then what happens is your body takes over. And you are trying to maintain the body and you have forgotten to maintain your soul. That's why, as I told you many a time, Mother told me you must start spirituality when we are young. Now I understand why. Because of this fact that you must do it all when you have the body in its state. And then there is a fourth stage. I find this page is so extraordinarily beautiful. I've never seen a description of the psychic stage, psychic levels of growth so beautiful. Fourth stage. It opens to a universal divine love, a vast compassion, an intense and immense will for the good of all, for the embrace of the world mother, enveloping or gathering to her children, the divine passion that has plunged into the night for the redemption of the world from the universal ignorance. It is not attracted or misled by mental limitations or any vital misuse of these great deep-seated truths of existence. It exposes them with its detecting search ray and calls down the entire truth of divine love to heal these malformations, to deliver mental, vital, physical love from their insufficiencies or their perversions and reveal to them their abounding share of the intimacy and the oneness and the ascending ecstasy and the descending rapture. Well, this is the fourth level, and I have seen this in my own life happening to people. The fourth level is the psychic being opens to universal divine love, a vast compassion, an intense and immense will for the good of all, for the embrace of the world mother. You see, I have seen this happening with Nolneda, with Pranabda, with Champaklaji, with whom I was pretty close. That they reach a level where there is the most dominant, predominant character is love. So suddenly you see this aspect of this love and goodwill for all, the embrace of the world mother. Almost it seems the highest peak of their life is to transform into love aspect. Nolnida was a great intellect, Pranabda and a great physical capacity, Champaklal the service. And yet at the end of their life, everyone spoke only of love, goodwill, helping. So it is not just talking about them, but even in their external gestures I have seen that the finale of the sadhana seems to be love. But it is the universal love, it's no more the individual love. So this universality is becomes so vast that at that time people go to them. Not for doing pranam, but the universal being actually attracts the individuals. So why is it that people rush to Nolnida or to Dada or to Champaklalji? Because they had become, in my understanding, somewhere with this universal love. We do discount all the individual shadows that they might have had. But what I saw was inevitably every one of them reached a kind of a universal love. And now I understand why. That is the fourth level of the psychic being, psychic growth. From the mundane, accepting all, restricted, none, and then suddenly they blossom into the universal. Then it becomes all and everybody. All that they are shunned before, they are no more shunned. Because now it is a universal. Like all can come, everyone can come, everyone is equal in their eyes. So these are the 4 stages of the growth of the psychic being, or the evolution of the psychic being. Now it's for you to understand and to really analyze yourself and see at what level we are. And then from there perhaps to move on, and then we say, okay, I am in the first level, don't be, but I am ready to move on. And that's why I read out where SOY Aurobindo would say in this chapter again in page 149, you can jump to page 149. It is here that the emergence of the secret psychic being in us as the leader of the sacrifice is of the utmost importance. You see, to explain this single sentence, I took you back into this previous chapter. What is it? Where SOY Aurobindo is telling us that it is the psychic fire has to be lit. Why is it that the psychic fire has to be lit? Because of these 4 stages. So friends, I see the importance given to the psychic fire, the psychic awakening, the psychic evolution is so, almost every sentence of synthesis of the letters, not directly in the lively one, but every sentence has an underlining in between the lines reading. You see only the psychic being. So as the mother had explained, that SOY Aurobindo's yoga begins with the psychic awakening or the psychic contact. Until then we have no business to say I am doing SOY Aurobindo's yoga. We are not at all right. Everybody is saying, oh, I am in SOY Aurobindo's yoga, I am in SOY Aurobindo ashram. So what? You may be in this ashram, but are you doing SOY Aurobindo's yoga? Because SOY Aurobindo's yoga begins with the psychic realization. So when people used to come in those early days to this yoga, SOY Aurobindo used to see, have they realized the psychic being? So all the old yogas come to the path where it ends in the psychic realization, and SOY Aurobindo begins with the psychic realization. So what all we are doing in the name of SOY Aurobindo's yoga, integral yoga, Mar Name, SOY Aurobindo Name, it's all a kind of external preparation, sincere preparation with our failures and success and all that. But it is only those who have connected with the psychic, they can say, we are on SOY Aurobindo's path. I had asked long back Amal Kiran a blunt question. I said, do you think you have realized the psychic? That was also late in the 80s, if not 90s, 100s. In his 80s when he was in his house here. He said, yes, after long I got established in my psychic being. So you see, a man like Amal Kiran was so close to SOY Aurobindo, a giant intellect, and yet to be established in the psychic takes long, long time. So it's they who could say, yes, we are on SOY Aurobindo's path. Until then, we are in this world attempting, insincere, trying. But what SOY Aurobindo is telling us, because there is this emergence of the psychic being, now we need to go forward. It alone can assure, even while the spiritual consciousness is incomplete, the perennial freshness and sincerity and beauty of the symbol, and prevent it from becoming a dead form or a corrupted and corrupting magic. It alone can preserve what the act its power with its significance. All the other members of our being, mind, life and force, physical or body consciousness, are too much under the control of the ignorance to be a sure instrumentation, and much less can they be a guide or the source of an unerring impulse. You see, I want you to understand why Sri Aurobindo is so much, and the mother are so much insistent upon the psychic realization. You see, every time they seem to tell you in different ways, in different manner, all doors lead to psychic being. Why? The old people, the old yogas also said, realize your Atman. But there are 2,000 different ways of doing sadhana. But Sri Aurobindo is saying, no, you must have the psychic relation first and then you act. Why? Precisely because of this. It alone can preserve for the act its power with its significance. That is, because Sri Aurobindo and the mother want to transform the outer nature, there is the absolute necessity of the psychic. Why? Because who will guide your outer life? The mind, the vital, the physical? No way. You see, if it's just a question of realizing the Brahman, fine, you don't need the psychic being, you can have the transcendental divine, universal divine, you can be in your own little room and in your own ashram. But here is a challenge of constantly saying, I want to transform the world, we want to transform the outer world. So when you go out into the street, who is your guide? Is it your mind? Is it your vital? You say, yes, I don't have my psychic, this is my mind. Okay, be guided by your mind. But you are sure to fall into the pitfalls. A big pothole is there, you are sure to fall, because mind can never be a proper guide in your life. The heart, no way. It's a mess of emotions. The body, impossible. It's tamas. So you see, in order to transform our life, we need to get a guide. You may say, I have a guide in the mother and Sri Aurobindo. But how do you think they are your guide? No, I believe in them, I have love for them, and I'm their great devotee. You see, as we have been saying, we may have we may have read the Life Divine Savitri 10 times, the Synthesis 5 times, and all the 30 volumes. And yet, are you sure that they are guiding you, or your vital is guiding you, or your mental is guiding you? Because if they have to guide us, if we are open to their guidance, that itself means we have the psychic touch. Because our mental and vital, unless they are fully surrendered, the mother and Sri Aurobindo or the psychic being cannot guide. So let us not be cushioned with this comfortable idea that they are guiding us. The guidance comes from the psychic being, and their guidance will come into us only when we are the psychic touch. Otherwise, what is happening, what could be happening, not what is happening, is that we are in a lotus eating position. Under their grace, some suffering and some sorrow is avoided, and we are happy that I am not suffering too much, I am fine, day to day activity I am chole jacche. But this chole jacche, I am just beginning to live, I am quite comfortably living. Is that enough of an indication of your progress in sadhana? That is my question. A comfortable living is no indicator of your spiritual growth. So we have to see on what level of the psychic being are we. First, second, third, fourth. So otherwise he would say, all the other members of our being, mind, life, force, physical, are too much under the control of the ignorance. They can never be the proper guides. Always the greater part of the motive and action of these powers cling to the old law. In their major part, the response is either a resistance or a qualified or temporizing acquiescence. For even if they follow the call, they yet tend, when not consciously, then by automatic habit, to bring into the spiritual action their own natural disabilities and errors. You see, that's what we are saying. the mind and the vital and the physical may be aspiring to be guided by the psychic being or the mother Aurobindo. But they are not transparent, they are not ready, there is so much of resistance. As we said, each one of us have your own mental preferences, the vital preferences, the physical preferences, and all the time telling the divine that, you say, I want you to give me my own preferences, otherwise I cannot take you. So divine will not come to you conditioned. In fact, if you see in this book, Dear Mother, he said even the grace does not come to you unconditioned. What we say, the divine grace is upon me, my kripa. How do you say that? It's all, after a time, any ashram, any institution develops a certain language. I went to Sai Baba's ashram, everybody says, Babaji ka kripa, Babaji ka grace. I went to another ashram, they say. So then suddenly I said, we say the same thing in ashram, my kripa. And they say the same thing, Babaji ka kripa. Where is the difference? You see, that's why I don't want ourselves to be blinded by this external Maya Kripa, Babaji's Kripa, Ramana's Kripa. Everybody is saying that. And what really astounded me was when I was in Sai Baba's ashram, I went to visit. There are songs in which Baba is really equated with the gods, among the gods. And people sang with all the devotion and conviction that Baba is so and so. And you come back to Aurobindo ashram. We have also coined songs in the name of Mother Aurobindo, that she is Bhagavati, he is this, he is that. So what are we trying to do? You go to Shraddha, you will find all the symbols and Mother's pictures and rings and everything. And you go to Sai Baba's ashram, you do the same thing. So I am trying to distinguish where are we and where are they and where should we be. Well, this is the basic, as we said, the outer worship. They have created emblems and symbols and badges and scarves and dresses and banyans. We have created the same thing. So you see, we have fallen into the rut of the external form immediately. We have all got banyans with Mother Aurobindo symbols. What's the difference? So the difference is nothing. Be it whatever guru, as my mother was telling you in the morning session, I was telling you. We have just changed the names of the gurus and the personalities. But is our faith so intense? If the faith is intense, you can have any guru, any name, any god, any religion. If you are not sincere in your self-offering, nothing will happen. You may have all the badges and the banyans in the world, but we are on the physical level, but without the psychic aspiration, nothing can happen. So then I understood that all the ashrams in India, we are on the same level of the physical worship. Very few have gone into the second level, mental consecration, and few are still into the psychic consecration. But most of us are happy, comfortable wearing the badges here, badges there, symbols here, symbols there. And then songs, we sing songs, they sing songs, he sings songs, everybody sings songs. So my urge now, if I understand rightly, is unless and until we go to the third level, the psychic consecration, we are all in the same boat. And we may all be drowning together or sailing together. If we do not have the sincerity of surrender and sacrifice, it is no use. I mean, I was in Italy a few years back. There was a seminar. They had the Mother's picture and they had the Christ's picture. There's no difference. So whatever faith they had in the Christ, now they replaced it by Mother's picture. So what have they done? They have transferred the old faith into the new person, because in Europe a few years back, suddenly Mother and Aurobindo were quite fashionable, the latest in the spiritual hierarchy. So a lot of people, they say, we are superminds delegates. Everybody was thinking the supermind is acting through them, because supermind was the latest in the market of spirituality. So this is a human tendency. You have the latest fashions. The religious man is the latest spiritual guru. So the latest is supermind and Aurobindo. So everybody is saying, I'm mother's channel, I'm the mother's force, I'm the mother's supermind is coming. But all this hypocrisy, all this externalism leads us nowhere until and unless we are the third level of the psychic being, psychic consecration. And as he is telling us here, the psychic being alone can be the guide. So I am trying to understand, it's not telling anybody, criticizing anybody. You see, what I do actually when I read is I am trying to understand on the spot. I read it at home, it has a different understanding. When I read here, greater depth comes and greater width comes, which I vocally share with you. It's not that I am in it, it's not that I have achieved it, nothing of the sort. There is a, as we say, commentary. I am trying to give a commentary, a live commentary, because I do feel what the Master is telling us, if only we could. So once I asked Champak Bhai, I said, all this question of surrender, and then many of us have reached the stage where we say, let thy will be done. That message was really given to Champak Lalji. I said, really, can we say the word let thy will be done? He said, no. To be able to say that let thy will be done, we have got to be on a very high spiritual consciousness. Otherwise, it's just an emotional thing. I'm not able to do that. I don't know which is right, which is wrong. So, chalo, tumhara kaam, tumhara marzi kar lo. Is that let thy will be done is tumhara marzi, tumko jo karna karo. It's that kind of a thing. But let thy will be done is a synonym of a great surrender. You have integrally surrendered. You are so immersed in the surrender, you say, Lord, I see thee everywhere. You see, when the question of let thy will be done, there is the dimension of a universality in there. Well, I see that it's thy will in the garden, thy will in this place, thy will up, thy will. So when I realize the oneness of the divine will everywhere, then I can say let thy will be done. Because I know your will is the only will that's taking place. So it's foolish of me to say my will. There's nothing as my will. But have we realized now that there's nothing as my will? We have. So Champak Lalji advised me, he said, you cannot do that. It's very difficult. Don't just say it for the sake of, I'm a great spiritual master, let thy will be done. We have just a negative attitude when we say, let thy will be done. It's kind of, jo ichha karna karo, I have nothing to do with it. It's not that. So he said, on the contrary, you also pray to the mother that whatever you are thinking, may it be also thy will. May it be. So there's a prayer. मैं जो सोच रहा हूँ माँ आप भी वो सोच रहे हो क्या? Is my prayer, is my desire, is my demand part of thy will? Then let it manifest. If it's not part of thy will, it will not. So even there we have to pray. We cannot take it for granted, let thy will be done and she will do. Well, at least now I think your will has to be done. The dining room bell is clicking. So we'll have to have a 1 second meditation. There we go.